For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
This special edition with Jeremy Bradley starts now.
Thank you very much, Larson. Wow, what a very serious introduction. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is the Scribble. You are listening to a special edition of the show this week. We are live, and I've got to tell you, everybody, the thing with podcasts is that often you read the description before you actually hear what's on the show, right? Radio broadcasts are kind of different because you don't know what's going to be coming up on the show until we tell you, and then it's, you sort of find out at the same time as everybody else. By now, if you've read the description of this episode, you know that I have some sad news to share. I'm going to cut to the chase. We've got a jam-packed show. I'm going to make it as quick as I can, but there are just things that I need to say. And so my announcement is, I feel like I'm coming out of the closet. My announcement is that my dog Basil has passed away. And I realize that if you're a listener of the podcast, or you haven't heard me on the radio shows, or you haven't seen, social media posts or anything like that, me saying that, making that statement, making that announcement probably doesn't mean anything to you. If you've been a long-time listener of the radio shows, if you are a dog lover, there's so many people on Twitter who, tweet, we send pictures of our pets back and forth and things like that, and everybody knows that I can't stand kids, I'll be honest, and my dogs, Ernie, Golden Retriever, and Basil, a 9-year-old Lab Cross, are my kids, and much like dogs or pets are for anybody, right? Even if you have kids, even if you have human kids, two-legged kids, even if you have, children, let's say, you often still view a pet, a dog, as a kid. So for me, they've also been incorporated into the business as well. So for me, it's not just a matter of, I keep a dog at home, so it's convenient when I come home and there's somebody there to give me attention. That's not it. When I realized how photogenic my dogs were, when I realized how much they, loved putting on Halloween costumes and things like that. I'm not talking about dressing them up, meaning like, on a regular basis when they go out for walks. I'm talking about, special occasions. So Christmas, they wear Santa hats. St. Patrick's Day, a green tie or whatever it is. So no, not on a daily basis, they're not dressing up. And over the years, the dogs have become characters on the radio shows. And we've got photo galleries on our website. Go to jbonair.com. You can click on, oh crap, I'm going to get this wrong. Web Extras. Click on Web Extras, and then you'll see all of the galleries. The last photo gallery is Basil's 9th birthday that we had last summer. So I'm gonna kind of recap the story of his life, and I've got to tell you, there has been so much debate since his death as to how we address this, what happens on the show when I talk about it. Is it going to be a gloom and doom? I'm going to sit here and cry. And so, truthfully, I'm going to be absolutely truthful with you. There were 2 other versions of this show pre-taped. The first one I taped hours after Basil died, and it was raw. I mean, it was 52 minutes. And it was every emotion you can expect when somebody just lost a pet hours earlier came out. And me being a long-winded host, it was a long story. So I'm actually sort of doing you a favor by not making that the show this week. And then just on... Okay, so it's like I said, we're live. This is Friday morning here, November 20th. So it was Wednesday night. I sat down in my home studio, and I tried again. And I was like, you know what? I'd had 2 whiskeys. Spiced whiskey is what I had. Had a couple shots of that, and I was like, okay, you know what? I can do this. And it's not a matter of... I don't get me wrong. It's not a matter of like, oh, I cried, I'm embarrassed. It wasn't that. It was just that I didn't feel that I told this story well enough. I didn't do him justice in the telling of the story of his life. So yes, you could say that 52 minutes, you damn well covered his life twice in that time period. Yeah, but it wasn't as composed, it wasn't as structured. And so here's what ended up happening. On Thursday night, so last night, I actually sat down to write something for our speakfreewithjb.com website. That's where we post my weekly newspaper column. I've been writing a column called To The Point for over 15 years now. And every week my posts or my columns are posted there. And I sat down and I just started to write everything. Now, again, if you've listened to me for any length of time, you've probably heard me plug my best-selling book. And so for me as a writer, there's something that's very relaxing. Freeing, actually, was the word that I used last night. There's something very freeing about keeping something bottled up and then having it come through your fingertips. Whether that's you holding a pen and writing it all down on a piece of paper, typing it all out, whatever. And so when I wrote a book probably about maybe 8 or 9 years ago. There were so many things that I had emotionally from my teenage year, from childhood, teenage years, my early 20s, mid 20s, that I hadn't really shared with anybody. I didn't really know the right venue, the right place, the right platform to get it out. And so I wrote a book, and that put out everything, really. It was a true, honest account of my emotions. And so there was something so freeing Thursday night when I said, now the post that I initially wrote was 7,000 words. In a Word document, it was 14 pages. So you think 52 minutes is long? That ain't shit compared to this. And there were 3 times when I started to cry as I wrote it. And again, I covered everything from the day that I met Basil, to the fun that we had over the years, to literally his last breaths that he had in front of us. And so there were 3 times when I cried as I was typing. But I've got to tell you, by word 7,000, I was at peace. I was calm. Even when I was crying last night, it was eyes watering. It wasn't, I've got Kleenex and I'm sobbing and I'm collapsing. No. It was eyes watering. It was tears coming down my face. And that was when I knew I can do this live. Now, again, at the beginning, when I had discussions with some people, they're like, you know what, do it live because it'll be emotional. There's no take-backs. It's just going to be what it is. And I didn't want to do that because I thought, well, oftentimes we would use the segment from this as the radio show, and it's a 2-hour top 40 music show. I can't go and stop the music for 10 minutes, get everybody depressed, and go, and now here's Kelly Clarkson. Like, there's no good transition for something like that. So here's what happened. I took the reins on this. I produced this entire program. So coming up today, it's 7 minutes in, and I'm just now telling you who's coming up on the show. But again, if you've read the description, you already know that Dr. Phil is calling in to talk about how people grieve, how our families grieve with the loss of a pet. See, I wanted to have guests that would sort of also put a positive spin on things. Dr. Phil also executive produces a new show about animal rescue, and so I thought this is great because Basil came from the animal shelter in my hometown. The City Pound, is kind of what it was called back in the day, and so I figured Dr. Phil is the person who would be best, so reached out, and Dr. Phil is joining us today. Also, Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. Again, I've got a 12-year-old golden retriever who lost his best bud. What is Ernie going through with the loss of his friend? Well, Cesar Millan is going to join us to talk about that as well. And Mayor Brian Bowman from Winnipeg, Manitoba, my hometown, again, where Basil was adopted from the city animal shelter. Mayor Bowman will be talking about the importance of adoption in your hometown, in your city, where you live. And so I'm grateful that Mayor Bowman could make the time because, as we know, Corona is, most elected officials have a very busy day lately thanks to Corona. And so I'm very appreciative. Mayor Bowman does have a dog, a 14-year-old dog, and we're going to talk about how sometimes the dog kind of runs the show, and I'll find out all about his dog, Indiana. So again, it's not a gloom and doom kind of a show, even when we did reach out to some other celebrities, and we made it very clear that this isn't a sorry for your loss kind of a conversation. I don't want that. I don't want people saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And honestly, the more that I've talked about it, the better I feel. Going on that 52-minute rant on day 1, right, on I think it was hour 4, hour 5 after he died, it hurt. Then the next day talking to people and telling the story. And then, now having sort of had 2 dry runs of this show and this episode and retelling it for broadcast, I'm good now. So I don't expect that I will choke up at all, but you know what? You never know. And again, we're live and things happen. So let me tell you about Basil here. So 9 years ago, I was an entrepreneur working at home. I had a 3-year-old golden retriever, obviously a puppy, or well, he's not quite a puppy at that age anymore, but still very energetic, still, bouncing, still wanting attention. And I felt very guilty because I was working from home. As an entrepreneur, you're not working an 8-hour day. Sometimes it's 10 hours, 14 hours. And the guilt of having him, I'm sitting in my office and, nudging my elbow to get my attention and wanting to play, or he'll be standing with a tennis ball and just waiting for me to acknowledge him. And I felt bad. And so a colleague of mine had said, well, why don't you get another dog? They can play with each other. They'll keep each other company. It's not, there you go. And I thought, okay. And so at that time, I didn't realize there were so many, or maybe there are more now, but I didn't realize there were so many animal rescues and shelters out there. So the first one I thought of naturally was, it was either the Humane Society or the City Pound. It's called the Animal Services Agency in Winnipeg. And I went to the website, and keep in mind, 9 years ago, website technology wasn't the greatest, so they really only had a few, pictures here and there, and I never liked the idea of just judging it based on a photo. I kind of thought, I need to see the personality, I need to interact, I need to see if you even like me, if you come out and you pay no attention to me, or you're not excited to see me, or I'm holding a toy for you and you don't want to play. I'm not saying that I'm going to write you off right there, but I at least want to spend a good 20 minutes, half hour, and see if we connect, see if we bond. And that's what I did with Ernie when I got him. And Basil, and there was a brief, I think it was about 8 seconds of a video clip, because again, technology wasn't, we didn't have streaming video and things like that back then. A very, very short, kind of, grainy cell phone video, I guess it was. And I thought, first of all, he looks very similar to Ernie, obviously, a retriever, a golden retriever, and then a lab cross retriever. They had the same mannerisms in terms of the way they, or I guess physical attributes, in the way they ran, walked, played with toys, tug of war, and I just thought I can actually see the 2 dogs, really connecting. And I had gone there too late in the day that they wouldn't do the adoption that night, because you had to do the paperwork and things like that. So I had to go back the next morning, but I put him on hold, I guess you'd call it, and went back. And again, just sort of fell in love with him. And he was a little bit mischievous as well, just sort of like Ernie was when Ernie was a puppy. And I was so excited. And like people do, I guess, on social media now when they have a baby, I was taking pictures from, minute 1 in the car on the way to my place. And then when I got home, I had gone with my friend because I said, I'll sit in the back seat with the dog just because he's a puppy. And, and so I just, I need somebody to drive me. And we got home, and I thought, what I'm going to do is I want to get my video camera, and again, before the days of actual really good cell phone video, and I went and got my camcorder, and I hit record, and then I let Ernie out, and I said I wanted to capture the moment that they met, the moment that they came nose to nose. And Ernie peed right on the sidewalk. He came sort of, running out to the backyard, and then just stopped dead in his tracks and peed when he saw this dog in the yard. And again, a golden retriever is playful, so it's not like it was anything aggressive, but he's never had a dog, just randomly in the yard. And Basil all of a sudden just comes, barreling at him and is jumping and wrestling and biting his ear. And Ernie's kind of like, oh, whoa, I like playing with dogs, but, not quite like this. He just didn't know how to take it. And Basil's jumping and playing and trying to get his attention. And Ernie's coming to me going, okay, let's get rid of this thing. I don't, really want to play like this. And it didn't really work all that well at the beginning. And Ernie had been socialized with other dogs, so it's not like he'd never, played with another dog before. My brother had a dog, and they were, they would tear around the backyard. But I think maybe it's different if you already know the dog, and then he comes into our yard, right? It's maybe different when it's your territory. And they didn't really hit it off. And again, it was a very long day. I hadn't really eaten. I was getting dehydrated. It was June, and my friend then had to go, and I said, okay, great. And again, I was so focused on them playing together, and then of course cleaning up the pee on the floor because he wasn't house trained. He was 6 or 8 months old at the time, and we made an evening out of it. And then we were sort of playing in the house, and again, Ernie's coming and saying, "Get this dog away from me." And then when night time came and bedtime, so that would have been, let's say 10, 11 o'clock, because it was a long day, I'd put Basil in the spare bedroom where I had a big kennel, and locked closed it, secured it, and then I went upstairs to bed with Ernie. And Basil would not stop barking. I mean, like when Super Nanny says, when the kids come out of the room and they go, "Mommy, Daddy," and then the parents are like, "Just go back to bed. Go back to bed. It's bedtime." And she says, just let them cry themselves to sleep. Like, they'll stop. They'll eventually stop. No chance with Basil. I am not kidding you. 4 o'clock in the morning, it was still barking, howling, biting at the cage. Like, just, I at one point I was thinking that he was either going to bite through it or he was just going to somehow come barreling in and find us. Like, that he would get out somehow. He didn't, though. And this is when I realized that I'm not going to win with this dog, especially something like that. So what I did was I had a smaller, kind of I guess you'd call it a pet carrier, that I had from when Ernie was a puppy. And what I did was I put Basil in that. He was still small enough to go into that. And I put that in the living room, and I said, okay, well, you know what? I'll sleep on the couch, so at least he can see me, right? It's not that he's just in this, scary dark room by himself, and he knows that we're off having fun somewhere else. So he's like, and again, same kind of a thing. But I guess it was cozy enough. Like, it was smaller than this really big cage. So I think he kind of realized, like, this is a little bit more, it's more closed in. It's sort of, and he did relax a little bit. And then when he finally settled down, I opened the door, but he stayed laying in it. So I was like, okay, there we go. But again, like I said, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning at this point, I was exhausted. I was just not in a good emotional space. So the next morning, same kind of a thing. Now, you realize that when you add a dog into the mix, it throws off your routine. You might have a dog that knows this is how we eat, this is how we walk, this is how we do this is how we get ready for bed, this is how we do that. I mean, it doesn't take... You hear that, like, the existing dog will teach the other one the lay of the land. No, at least it didn't in my situation, not with a 3-year-old dog anyway. And the next morning, again, they just didn't hit. We went to the backyard, Basil's trying to wrestle, Ernie's like, no, and then I felt bad because Ernie's life had been disrupted, right? Ernie's got this spot on the couch. And I realized that Ernie's not the king, so it's not up to him how things go, but you just kind of feel bad, right? Ernie didn't have a say. I'm just, bringing this guy in who's annoying the piss out of him. And my friend called me and said, so how's it going? And I was in the backyard and I started to cry. I just had this breakdown where I said, I don't think it's working. Like, I don't see this getting better. Ernie doesn't like him. Basil's too aggressive. And again, aggressive, I just mean, like I said, jumping, biting there was no, it wasn't a fight or anything like that. It was just puppies or a young puppy trying to play with a little bit of a bigger dog. And he's like, well, my friend said, do you want to take him back then? And that's what killed me even more. That's what made it hurt more, was the fact that I can't look at this dog as like a pair of shoes that I just changed my mind. Oh, I didn't like him. Oh, I'm going to take him back. I appreciate that they have a 7-day return policy or, whatever it's called. But I gave you carpet. I gave you a bed. I gave you toys. I gave you a life outside of concrete and chain link is what I did. And I don't know that I would have ever been able to live with myself. I think that I would have had regrets. I would have had regrets. Well, I know I would have had regrets that day, the next day, because there's always that what if, right? People do that in life. What if I had a baby? What if I took that job in England? What if I, and then you just can't live with that, right? And so I kind of thought, I'm a stubborn person anyway, so I can't just throw in the towel that easily. Like, I just can't do it. He's not a human, but he's still a living being with, I believe, emotions and feelings and things like that. So I just kind of slugged it out, and little by little, they started to figure out how to play together. They figured out how to make it work. And quite honestly, watching them wrestle, I have videos of from 8 years ago, them just tearing around the backyard. I mean, there was one clip that was like, I think it was 2.5 minutes of them just running in circles, leaping at each other, and so it worked. So giving up was, not giving up was a good thing. I'm glad that I stuck it out. Ernie was patient and made it work. Basil kind of figured out that, we got to chill out a little bit, but, we can still wrestle. And, up until even just, this summer, up until 2 weeks before Basil died, they would be in the basement wrestling. I mean, that was one of the fun things where I said, is it dance time? Because we have lights and surround sound system in the basement. And if I would say, is it dance time? They both flew down those stairs quicker than you could imagine. And again, I've got a video of that too from, I think it was June, where the music isn't even playing yet, and they're already just going at it. And so they became brothers, right? I used to say they were dogmastic partners, and they were. So for 9 years, they were side by side, never apart. Here's the thing. The most they were apart, save for the vet appointments I'll be telling you about shortly, the most they were apart was if one of them had to go out to the bathroom and the other didn't, right? They weren't like attached at the hip where it's like, oh, I've got to go because he's going outside. I mean, Ernie's 12 years old. If he's asleep on the couch and totally out of it, he's not giving two shits about shits. Basil could go out on his own. So that, but what I'm saying is for at most 2 minutes, they would have been apart ever in that 9 years. And, all right, so I'm trying to sort of play out in my mind. I'm not choking up if that's where you're thinking. Make that a drinking game, right? Every time he sniffles or I'm not crying. And so what happened was, I was very lucky that over the course of the 9 years, not once did Basil have need for medical attention, aside from when he was neutered. Obviously, you need to go to the vet and, you seek medical treatment for that, right? He's got to have, he's got stitches and things like that. Outside of that, heartworm pills. I'm talking about like having a medical problem. Never an injury, never, a moment where, oh, he's throwing up like crazy, there's something wrong, oh, he ate something. Never. Neither of them. Ernie had ear infections a couple of times when he was a puppy, and then because he's a golden, he gets hot spots, which is sort of a seasonal allergy kind of a thing, common for that breed. So aside from those, I've been very lucky that at least for a good 8-year stretch, never did we have to go to the emergency animal hospital. Did we have medication for them? Again, aside from hot spots, which is whatever. That's not an Ernie thing. That's a golden retriever thing. You know what I mean? And so this summer, there was one day where Basil didn't eat in the morning. My bedroom is upstairs. Basil's always the first to sense when I'm waking up because your body starts to move and I kick them or whatever. And as soon as you either open your eyes or lift your head up, Basil flies off the bed and I call it bounce barking. His front legs are bouncing and he's barking every time he lands on the ground, every time he barks. And then he runs down the stairs. There's sometimes it would be so fast that he would go headfirst right into the bathroom door if it was closed. Like it was funny. I would think painful, but whatever. And that morning he followed me out of the kitchen, even though I had just given them food. And I just chalked it up to, well, he doesn't want to eat today, or maybe he's just not feeling that great. Humans do that all the time. How many days have you skipped breakfast? Now, it is uncharacteristic for a dog, obviously. You know that, most dogs, even just one piece of kibble, they're going crazy. My dogs go crazy for an ice cube. So it was something that I noticed. I observed it, but I just filed it away. Later that day, he was fine. He had dinner, no problem. Okay, so I just thought, whatever. Wasn't feeling good in the morning. Okay. And again, for 9 years old, that's basically a senior already. So, there you go. But in terms of walking and energy, like I said, we would go downstairs and, I would dance. They would wrestle. It would be 2 hours straight. I'm not kidding you. That's not an exaggeration. Or sometimes we'd even be down there for 3 or 4 hours. They're not wrestling the whole time. They might be laying down, but then just out of nowhere, they'll just start again. And my point in telling you that is he was healthy. He was energetic. He was lively. There was nothing slowing him down. And so that day I don't even know. It was June or July. Bottom line is that it happened one time and I just filed it away. And then it happened again on a Sunday. And he didn't eat in the morning. And then we were going to go for a walk. And he didn't want to come for a walk. Now again, if you my family knows that if I've come to their place with Basil for a walk, I mean they know, or anybody who's walked with me, my friends or whoever who have come, is it walk time, would send him just, and again I've got a video of that too, where it's like, is it walk time? He's going crazy. He didn't want to come for a walk, so that was really, really weird. And even Ernie, when we went, was kind of like, this is not right with just the two of us going. So we made it a quick walk. We left Basil at home, came back, and he was still just laying on the kitchen floor where we left him. And he was excited that we came back. His tail was wagging, but he just didn't get up to come and see us. And what I started to do was I started to take videos. Now, I'm not one who goes and posts personal stuff on Facebook. Like, I can appreciate people doing that and either wanting sympathy, attention, support, whatever it is. I don't do that, and I never have. I was taking the videos to send them to the vet because, again, anybody who's met Basil wouldn't believe me that I'm saying, here, Basil, have a treat. Here, Basil, have your favorite toy. Here, and he's just not doing it. Again, I realize that a doctor is not going to diagnose a pet through a video, through a 30-second video. That wasn't my purpose. But just a heads up, hey, doctor, I'm letting you know this is how he's acting and reacting to things. And he's reacting to things? Really no way. And that evening, he wouldn't eat his dog food, and he was eventually drinking water when I had a little Tupperware container, and I put the bowl of water under his nose and then kind of flicked it up, to sort of wet his nose and then his tongue. And then he drank a little bit. And I thought, well, I'm going to do a Hail Mary here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to order Dairy Queen delivery. And I don't feed my dogs human food, but I figure a dog is not going to pass up a burger being waved under his nose. A dog is not going to pass up fries. A dog is not going to pass up vanilla ice cream under. You know what? I'm saying that. And this was just, hey, he hasn't eaten anything all day. You know what? A burger is not the worst thing for him. And again, I'm taking video of this burger right under his nose, and he's just looking away. I don't know what's wrong, and I'm in a panic. And I've got people telling me, I didn't go and blast this out, but I'd mentioned it to my accountant, my brother, and my mom, and my accountant coincidentally had just actually had her 15-year-old dog, one of Ernie's first friends. He was just put down a few weeks before. So I didn't feel right kind of going to her because she's going through her own thing now, right? Like I didn't want to go and, burden her with that. But my mom said as long as he's eating and drinking, then that's okay, right? It's not, or it's okay-ish. I'll say it that way. And so the vet gets back to me Monday morning, and I said, you know what? He's sort of rebounded now. Like he ate, and we're going for a walk, and things are okay. We're not in the clear. I'm not saying, oh, there's no need to come in. Of course, I still want him checked out. And the doctor said, well, then it could wait, a day or two. Let's give it some time. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Again, humans have bad days all the time. And so that was... this was a long weekend. It was a holiday weekend. I know. I'm trying now. See, it was so recent, but it seems so long ago. Anyway, nevertheless, we went back a couple of days later, and Basil had a urine test. Nothing really concerning in that, and we couldn't do a blood test. The doctor wanted next to do a blood test, but Basil had recently eaten. Oh my God! Here we go, everybody. It's all down. He had recently eaten. And he had water, and apparently for the blood test, it's sort of like a human where you shouldn't have anything in your system like before surgery. So for the blood test, so we made an appointment on the the Friday. Oh shit, everybody, here we go. It's going downhill. We're live. There's no do-overs. Remember, Dr. Phil is coming up next, so maybe he'll lend some insight here. Friday morning, first thing Friday morning, we went to the vet office and we did the blood work, and I got an email at 10:35 a.m. from the doctor, and I saw it was a lengthy sort of paragraph. I kind of skimmed for sort of keywords, and I saw the words severe blood disease, and instantly my face got cold, and my hands just sort of felt numb. Do you know what? Well, maybe if you haven't had a phone call where it's like, you get the phone call and it's that somebody's died, and it just stuns you. Because again, think about it. This is a dog that, for the most part, was the life of the party. Again, look at the website. In his 9th birthday, he's wearing party hats and everything, and severe blood disease. So I was just like, okay, let me start reading this from the beginning. And he says that it's a severe blood disease. There's no known cause. The blood cells just kind of attack each other, and it's a problem. And he needs to come back right away. We need to start him on meds like yesterday. And he said, but no Ernie. See, the thing with the dogs is that it was always a package deal. If one of them had an appointment at the vet, they both went. It was just, a group support, I guess, kind of a thing. And he said no, Ernie. And so I've got this dilemma going, how do I leave the house with one dog and leave the other one behind? If he knows that there's already something up, we've had 3 vet appointments in a week, so Ernie must know. We've never really, we've been here before, but we've never been here that many times. They like it. They would pull me to go to the door, so it's not like the vet was a bad thing. But if dogs do sense, and this is something to ask Cesar Millan, if dogs do sense when each other are sick or unwell or dying, it's not fair. Again, I've never just, aside from Basil that one day not walking with us, I've never left them. I'm just taking one out of the house and the other. No, it's always a package deal. It always was. And I thought, how do I do this? Like, Ernie's going to stress out and freak out, and, if he knows that something's wrong, and, it's like teasing him, right? Oh, we're going for a walk, you're not. I mean, I wouldn't have the heart to do that. So I called my brother, who is a teacher, and he was at home that day, coincidentally. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to come there with the dogs, and then I need to have either, your kids or somebody, take him in the backyard, distract him, whatever, and then I've got to escape with Basil to go to the vet. I told him, like, it's a serious thing. This isn't just like, I'm going to go to the park with Basil. If you can just watch Ernie because he's cramping our style. No, like, this is emergency. This is urgent. And, a good brother's going to help you out, right? And so my brother's like, yeah, no, whatever you need, let's do it. He was actually building a shed in the backyard, so he kind of did stop what he was doing, and I'm very appreciative of that. And so we went to the vet office, and we get there. Basil's suddenly on 3 different kinds of medication and baby aspirin. I went to the store and I got one of those little pill organizer things, like he's an 80-year-old, diabetic with a heart condition and I don't know, something else, and headaches. And I was like, wow, this could be the rest of his life, that I've got to organize pills and make sure that he's getting the blue one in the morning, the yellow one, and the white one in the evening. But again, as a dog parent, you just do it, whatever. I don't care if it's inconvenient. You make it work. And so Basil came home. Again, this was a Friday, so the doctor said he's got to rest this weekend. No exercise, nothing strenuous, nothing energetic, nothing lively. That's like telling a bird not to chirp, or a bird not to fly, or a fish can you just stay in one place? I mean, again, if you've ever seen these dogs wrestle, play, even him just coming up the stairs, he's going a mile a minute. Even me just getting up off the couch, he would be in the doorway quicker than I was. So easier said than done. So no, we didn't have any wrestling matches. We didn't have, fetch at the park, but there wasn't really any slowing him down, right? So it was an okay weekend. He was eating, everything was fine. I knew that we weren't in the clear. I'm not saying that I thought, oh my God, he's cured and he's great. Sorry, this was the holiday weekend then. That's right. This was the holiday weekend. And the doctor had said, well, let's connect after the weekend on the Tuesday and let's see how it goes. And the Tuesday morning rolls around. And again, Basil had a great weekend. When the doctor emailed me in the morning just to check in, I said, you know what? Prior to, 2 hours before you emailed me, everything was good. I said, he's a little bit sluggish today. He's sort of moping around. He ate slowly. He had, like a kid who's, only wants the dessert. They'll eat the little pieces of lettuce, but they'll wait for the ice cream. And that's kind of what Basil did. He didn't really eat the actual dog food, but he did take a treat. So, again, I look at that as a victory. Eating is eating. And I just said, he's been okay, but today's just not that great. And so Tuesday evening rolled around, and I said to my mom, why don't you let's go for just a short walk, because it almost seems like he needs somebody else. Anytime somebody comes to the house, anytime we go for a walk and see other people, or if we go to my brother's house or whatever it is, that there's just an extra level of energy there. And so she said, well, if he's not supposed to be walking, I said, we could just even go around the block. The good thing about my family is that my brother lives, I would say, a 4-minute drive away, and my parents live a 5-minute drive away. Where when I go for a walk with the dogs, we actually go to my parents' place and then stop at my brother's on the way home. So we're all very close in proximity. And so she's like, yeah, okay, fine. So we went Tuesday evening, and just when she pulled up, the dogs are getting their leashes on. The dogs always knew that if there was a very brief phone call, So we're talking a phone call that's like 30 seconds. It was generally her calling to go, and that we would walk. It would be her calling and saying, okay, I'm on my way, and that's when I leash up the dogs, and then we go. So that actually became sort of a signal to them. And I kind of felt bad the evenings where I would get a phone call, and it wasn't her, and then all of a sudden the dogs are staring at me like we're going for a walk, so then I would actually sort of feel guilty and just walk them. She got to the house. Ernie was right at the gate, ready to go. Basil was there, but then when it was time to go, he actually sort of slowly walked back to the house. And so, my mom is waiting at the front sidewalk, and I just said, come up here, like, let him see you, because I don't know, he just sort of walked away. And, he eventually kind of slowly walked to the gate and then went back to the back door. And so my mom said, well, if he doesn't want to come, he doesn't want to come. Like, just let him back in the house, whatever. And I did. I went, I unlocked the door, turned off the alarm. I put him up, took him up the stairs into the kitchen. And then as I'm walking away, he was right behind me, almost beating me out the door. And so I said, okay, well, do you want to come or not? Here's what I didn't realize at the time. He wanted to come with us, but he couldn't come with us. And I do have some guilt. I have some guilt that, he shouldn't have walked. And, maybe one lap around the block was not good for him. Maybe that isn't what he needed. I'm not blaming myself for spreading the disease faster or stopping his heart or whatever. But, and there's times when, a doctor will say, well, stay off your feet, whatever. And you kind of just don't. I wasn't taking him for a run. We weren't doing the 100-yard dash, but... and my mom had noticed that he was sort of kind of walking to sort of one side and then would just slowly stop and then kind of look, and he just wasn't into it. Basil was usually... They were both very good walkers, but he was more so the puller if he was very excited. He would sort of pull a little bit. We got back to the house, and he didn't jump up on the couch. Again, we all had our positions on the couch when we would lay and watch TV or whatever at night. And he didn't jump up. He just sort of laid on the floor, sort of by my feet. And I said, okay, well, here's what we'll do is we will have an indoor camp out. And that's something that we would do in the winter where I move the coffee table, lay a bunch of blankets and pillows on the floor, and then we kind of just cozy. And sometimes I'll put the little electric fireplace on or light candles by the TV, and it's just warm and cozy. And again, you got these big fur blankets that these four-legged fur blankets that I have. So we would do that. We watched TV. And coincidentally, Basil got his name from John Cleese on Fawlty Towers, his character. And John Cleese was just putting out a book, and I had recorded a bunch of TV interviews. He was on with, I think it was Seth Meyers and, one or two other shows. And so I was like, I'm going to watch Basil Fawlty talk about, his book with Basil. And so Tuesday night was good. We just, we laid on the floor. It was cozy. A couple times Basil got up in the night. He'd walk a couple steps and lay down. Again, the dogs do that all the time, right? A human doesn't necessarily lay exactly the same way. For dogs, they get up and they'll move and they'll lay on this side and that side. Wednesday morning, the sun's up and we're awake. I look, Basil wasn't there. He was inching his way. He was in the kitchen. It appeared that he was heading towards the water bowl at some point in the night, and would walk a couple steps and then would lay down. Walk a couple steps and lay down. And he tried several times to get up and walk further, but he didn't. And then my mom called at about noon to ask how things were going, and I said, well, you know what, he's pretty slow going today. And I said, maybe he's sore, maybe he's tired from the walk, maybe that was not a good thing to do. And she said, well, just let him rest the day. And I said, yeah, good. Again, it's a Wednesday. So here's some inside information about our radio shows. I usually work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. So to go to the vet on the Friday was good. And then to have this Wednesday, I was still sort of doing some work on my laptop in the living room. And I was like, yeah, we can just watch TV and do nothing today. We're good. It's all right. We're fine. And then in the afternoon, he went back to the kitchen for water. And then he was just laying there. And I've read that when dogs are dying, they want to be left alone. They don't want to be around you. And, but again, as the parent, I can't accept that. I can't, because I also feel like he is so comfortable with us that he wouldn't want to. He would want us comforting him. He would want to be laying with me. Contrary to what their instinct says, I disagreed. I would believe that Basil would want to be with us. Again, he's never apart from Ernie. He was always, side by side with Ernie. And he didn't. And again, I do have a bit of guilt. This is where I started to choke up the last time I told the story. So be warned, I don't know if it's going to happen now. I feel guilty that I kind of pressured him, that I sort of like pulled him along the kitchen floor and said, come with us, come in the living room. Like, let's just watch TV. You can lay on these fuzzy blankets. I've got, blankets and pillows and everything here. You'd think that we were basically laying on a mattress. That's how much like padding and stuff there was on the floor. And, he just instead laid on, cold linoleum. But again, if that's how he was comfortable or that's what he wanted to do, I was stubborn and I should have just let him stay there. So about 1:30 or so, I could hear him get up and then a kind of a thump that he would fall back down on the floor. Not fall, lay down. And then eventually I see his head in the doorway and I was like, yay, Basil! This is great, you made it! Come on, come see us! And again, he had sort of this look like he was a marathon runner. Like he was, he's just, I'm going to throw myself into it, that last 10 yards, that last, whatever. And eventually you could see that he was waiting to kind of get at least to the base of the couch by my feet. And then once he got there, just lay down. I did it. I made it. And I was like, there you go, you made it. And so then he kind of laid in sort of awkward positions. He wasn't necessarily laying on his side. He was always kind of laying straight up. I don't know if that makes sense. But he wasn't on his side. He was just sort of, And then this time he was laying on his side. And then a couple of minutes later, he got up and he walked and then he laid basically right in the middle of the blanket, right in the middle of the floor where we had this all set up. Almost perfectly, like he had just measured it out. Like I'm laying right there. And again, a really hard roll onto his side. And it was like his head, hit the floor. And yes, even though we had padding and everything on the floor. And I was just like, wow, that must have hurt Basil. Like that was a hard head hit on the ground. And then he was started to huff and puff. Again, like he had just run a marathon. He was huffing and puffing and breathing. And so this seemed to be quite intense. And I kind of just sort of like tossed my computer to the side. I was on the couch. And I threw the computer to the side and I kind of leaned over. Just like you would if somebody is like, having a heart attack or whatever, and you're doing CPR, you're kind of like crouched over top them. That's how I was. And he's breathing. And so I put my hand on his stomach and I'm like, it's okay, Basil, chill. Basil, calm down. It's all right. And then I look, I put my face, closer to his and I'm like, Basil, it's all right. Calm down. It's okay, Basil. We're here. Everybody's fine. Everybody's good. And these are words that I would be saying to them, all the time. And there was something about his eyes. I will never unsee that. There was something about his eyes that, in a movie when there's like a fight scene and somebody is getting choked or strangled and the eyes are kind of like wide as though they're sort of bugging out. That's what was happening. He was, and I waved my hand in front of him a couple of times and his eyes blinked. So I was like, okay, so he's with us. He's here. He can see. But then it was like he was just sort of staring off. It was just... And the way that I can sort of, paint it visually, and I'm not intending to be crude, but it was like, when you have a fish on a boat and they're laying on their side and they're sort of gasping for air. The mouth is like, opening. That's kind of what he was starting to do. And then it sounded like he was choking a couple of times. And so I was like, Basil, just because I didn't know if he was just getting worked up. And so I'm talking calmly. I'm not worked up. I'm petting his stomach. We're here, stroking his head, whatever. Leaning in, petting his ear, touching his ear, whispering in his ear. And then all of a sudden his stomach stopped. Now in this moment, this is where, it feels like at least a minute. This is, in reality, maybe 5-10 seconds. I don't know. I didn't have a stopwatch, but it was a long time. It seemed forever. But his mouth is still going. So I kind of thought, well, this is weird. I'm not saying that I listened for a pulse. I'm just saying his stomach stopped, the breathing in and out, as you would see when a dog is panting like that. And I was like, okay, well, at least his stomach is calm. But he's still breathing. And of course your head's going, a million things are flying through. And now Ernie's, of course, now excited and wondering what's going on and what's happening and in everyone's face. And then all of a sudden he just started to kind of, again, the mouth was sort of like opening as though he was trying to cough or bark or say something. I don't even know. Or catch his breath even. And there were a couple times. And then it seemed like his teeth got caught on the blanket as though he couldn't close his mouth. I can't describe it. I can see it. But I can't. This is an audio recording, so I figure out a way to paint the picture. Again, I don't need it to be graphic, but just know that he was struggling to breathe, I guess, is the gist of it. And all of a sudden, he was just kind of, his mouth just sort of moving. And quickly like a good grown man, I called my mom and I said, like, Mom, I think Basil's dying. And she's like, what are you talking? I just talked to you like an hour ago. He wasn't great, but no. And I said, no, I really think that this is, and she's like, well, what's going on? I said, well, he was just laying on his side, and then he was breathing heavy, and then it's like he was choking, and I don't know. And she said, well, just call the vet and see if you can take him there. And I said, oh, well, okay, I'll call you back. And so I called there, and and again, they knew what he was going through. They knew he was sluggish, so it's not like I'm just some random guy off the street coming in like, can I bring in my dog? They knew that he was a patient and what have you. And she's like, what's going on? I said, I don't even think that I've got time to describe it. Like, I just, she's like, yes, bring him in right away. Again, no Ernie. And I thought, well, this is going to be really hard now. That's going to be tough, especially something like this. And so I was just like, oh my God. And, I'm home by myself. I've got to figure out how to do this. How do I separate Ernie when he already knows there's something really, really wrong or different happening? And, but my focus is still on Basil though. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I'm here for, again, it's like stopping CPR, right? For a human, you're with that you're there, you're right there. And then suddenly his mouth just stopped moving. And, I said we're live. I said we're doing it live, so just bear with me here. Again, my parents only live a few minutes away, so it's not like I had to wait for my mom to, fly in from another city or something. But I didn't hear that she had pulled up in front of the house. And she was going to take me to the vet. And Ernie had either heard her or seen her or something, coming up the sidewalk or whatever. And so he was at the front door, which is how I knew that she was there. And I kind of appeared in the doorway, and she sort of put her, arms out like, are you coming? Or like, what gives? I thought this is an emergency. I thought you were going to have him ready. And I just shook my head no. And so then she came up the steps and she came to the front door. And I said, he's gone. And she said, no, he's not. And I said, yes, he is. And so she came in the house, and she just kind of came in the doorway. And she didn't even step in the living room. She just looked in and she said, yeah, he is. So, not even 5 minutes after I talked to her. And I went back to him. And I crouched down. And I just said, no, Basil, no, it's okay. And she said, Jeremy's he's gone. And I just, and then she walked over and she said, close his eyes, because he was just, eyes open and just staring. And so she put her hand on the top of his eyes and just closed them. And she said, well, at least he was at home, comfortable with you guys. And I said, well, it is sort of weird that, he kind of laid perfectly, like right in the middle of the blankets. And Ernie was starting to freak out at that time. And so I just said, okay, well, I mean, I've got to lock him in the kitchen or something, I guess. Like, I mean, I guess theoretically I could have brought him to the vet this time, because it's not like Basil was going to be getting medical attention. But again, there's just, so many things happening at the same time. And so I quickly, I ushered, Ernie, I just grabbed him by the collar, and maybe, maybe too aggressively in that moment, but, it was just also for sort of his own good, I would think. And just grabbed him by the neck, by the collar, and just, pulled him into the kitchen with me, which I know that he didn't want to go, because one, we've got company, so that's always exciting, and two, something's wrong with Basil, so he's right in there. But again, you just sort of you need to do what you need to do in that moment. And so I locked him in the kitchen. The house alarm the panel is at the back door, and I was just like, I'm not going to set the alarm. I'll just, so the good thing about Basil being right on the blanket on the living room floor was that we kind of just sort of, we just sort of folded the blanket and then just, carried him out. And, we put him in the back of the car, and then we went there, and, the vet's, not even 5 minutes away, but it was the longest drive ever. And we got there, and they came, and I said, I can't carry him in there. Like, I'm already weak just walking myself. I'm not carrying an 80-pound dog. So they came, and then they, they put him on the, the cold steel table. But, he's wrapped in a soft blanket that we always laid on. And the doctor comes in, and he said, I was dreading this. And he started to pet Basil. He always called Basil, oh, baby. Oh, my baby. How are you? And he said, no, baby. And he was petting him. And so he still just checked for, a pulse or heartbeat or whatever. And he's like, I'm just going to check, anyway. And there was nothing. And, it was, it's hard because it was 9 days after being diagnosed with a blood disease. If it's one thing if it's cancer and, there's sort of like a prolonged illness. Not that you want that. You don't want your dog suffering, but, you've got time to prepare. I'm going to ask Dr. Phil about this. So you've got that time, right? He's going good day, bad day, good day, bad day. So, did he wake up that morning and know that he's going to die? I mean, I look back at it and go, did I know that he had an hour to live, 2 hours to live? When I woke up that morning, would I have done things differently? Of course, we always would do things differently. And so the doctor left the room. They let me have, a few moments. They closed the door, left me in there. And, you talk, right? I mean, I know that he couldn't hear me. And I did the usual, I love you. I'm going to miss you. You're a good dog. Ernie's going to miss you. And, not that I was expecting to give a eulogy or something in that moment, but 20 minutes earlier he was fine. Well, not fine, but, And so and me being a broadcaster and writer and everything, yes, knowing me, I would have had something written if I knew that. And now I'm getting all stuffed up. This is terrible for a broadcast or, 50-some minutes into this. So it was a few minutes left alone. Quite honestly, this is going to sound so weird. If they would have let me, sleep there that night, on the floor or on the table or something with him, I would have done that just so that I could have one more sort of, so that I would know that he was comfortable and not just on a cold table with strangers. Oh my God. Can we take a break? All right, we're going to take a break, and I'll be right back on the Scribble.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. SpeakFreeWithJB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on the Scribble, the special edition of the podcast. I appreciate you tuning in as you've just listened to me go on for, 50-some minutes, which I joked, right? That 52-minute rant. But, I had a bit of an introduction and things like that. And here's what's not going to happen on the show today. I'm not going to apologize for being emotional. People tend to do that. When there's an interview or if somebody's talking, right? As soon as they choke up, they go, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. I'm not apologetic for feeling the way I do and having emotions. And what's awkward is that, or not awkward, it's different for me because I don't normally open up about my personal life on the radio show, on the podcast, in writing, on social, wherever. I don't. People don't know about my relationships and, if I'm mad at this person or I don't like this person, I had a fight with this person. I've never done that. And I just feel like the dogs are sort of a different animal, I guess it would be the term. They're just sort of different because I've kind of put them out there as characters, right? I mentioned that earlier. And so I wouldn't be able to just post one photo and go, Basil's dead, I'm going to miss him. Because here's the deal, is that nobody knew that he was sick, save for the not the inner circle, but, my brother, my mom, so my parents knew, my brother knew, and my accountant knew because she, my colleague, had just had her dog put down. So, but nobody else knew. Nobody work-wise, friends, nobody was told anything. And again, really this just sort of played out over 9 days, so it's not like it was, if it was 6 months or something, sure, people would know about it. But again, there was a holiday weekend in there, and, I just sort of pulled back a little bit. Anyway, so, you leave your dog at the vet, really, and you sort of feel this protective, like a protective sort of, I don't know, like you almost don't trust them because he's never, he's had, dog sitters or, whatever, he's gone with people, but, he's in this state now, you don't trust them, especially when you're leaving him like this. Now, again, I know that he couldn't hear me when I was talking to him. And I had regrets that I didn't say this or I didn't say that. And it wouldn't have made a lick of difference. I know it wouldn't have. But there's just something where you just kind of feel bad. No different than if somebody dies and you haven't told them a secret or you didn't tell them how you felt about them or whatever it is. And that's going to be with you forever. And so I felt that way for a little bit. And then when I got home and I was kind of like, oh shit, now we have an entirely different issue to tackle here, is that Ernie's at the house. And force of habit, like I said, I come in through the back door because that's where the alarm is set. So I even though we left through the front, I just happened to come up the sidewalk and go into the yard and come through the back door. And again, the alarm wasn't set. Again, forgot that I didn't do it, but whatever. I opened the kitchen door, and Ernie was still standing at the door to the living room. Standing. Again, this is a 12-year-old dog, legs, whatever. Just nose to the door, waiting for it to open. He wasn't laying down there. He wasn't sitting. He didn't even hear me come in. He didn't even look back to see me open the other door and come in. And I just thought, oh, this is not going to be good. For a good, and again, I don't know how long we were gone. Let's say 30 minutes. 30 minutes. At most, it was 30 minutes. He stood there. That's loyalty to your friend. Do you know what I mean? And so when you see that as a human, you're just like, oh, it's no different than those people. There's videos like, on TMZ or whatever of somebody, dumping a dog in a field and then the dog just waits there for the person to come back. It's hard, but Ernie was waiting for that door to open so that he can visit his friend. And so I opened the door and he went running into the living room. He quickly went right to the spot where this all played out. Sniffed around, kind of did a lap around the living room, and just was basically running around the house looking for him. And then I guess his nose took him to the front door because, again, that's where we left. And he sniffed all around the front door. And then I just kind of said, okay, you know what? Here's the deal. Let's go for a walk. And I thought that would be a good thing. Here's why it wasn't. Or maybe I don't think it was. Again, when we walk, Ernie's always on the right. I'm in the middle. Basil's on the left. You could not change up that formation. So if somebody comes to walk with us, they would have to be to the left of Basil. So Ernie, me, Basil, other human being. If that person went to the right of Ernie, the dogs would not know what to do. They would be looking, going, okay, wait a second, this isn't right. Or if somebody else tried to walk the two of them and I ended up going to the left, it wouldn't work. So Ernie a couple times sort of fell behind, not fell physically, but trailed behind, and then all of a sudden popped up on the left side of me. And then there were times when he'd go back to a spot and he'd be looking to the left. Like, where's Basil? We're not nose to nose as we're walking here. And he did that a bunch of times. And then I realized, I had my music on. I was like, I need some I'm not going to listen to, an audio book like I normally, I'm going to put on my music. So I had it on shuffle on my phone. First song, Rock Voisine, I'll Always Be There. Second song, Aerosmith, Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Third song, Savage Garden, the Animal Song. And I thought, this is Basil having a laugh. This is, you got to kind of just, I'm going to find some light in all of this. And quite honestly, in that moment, I was more concerned about Ernie, really. I realize, when I get to the house and, the first time that we watch TV at night or the first time, things happen, it's going to be different. But then I was like, there's so many people in the neighborhood that know the dogs. There's Jan, there's Aaron, there's all these, people who, when we walk down their street, if those people are in their yard or whatever, the dogs are basically like pulling me as soon as they see them because, we'll stop and talk and they'll play in the yard with their dogs or whatever it is. And then I just thought, whoa, this is going to be awkward. Like, what if I all of a sudden run into one of these people? We cross paths. What am I going to do? They're going to go, oh, where's Basil? I'm going to go, oh, he just died an hour ago. Have a good day. Like, so thankfully we didn't. And then I just I had a change of heart. I was like, you know what, Ernie, let's just go down some streets that we don't normally go down. Like, let's mix it up. Like, let's have some distraction here. And then when we got home, I gave him water and he kind of unwinds. I sort of busied myself with some work again and tried to, take my mind off it. And I looked back from my office. I can see sort of into the living room. He was laying on the spot and he was staring at the front door. He was laying on the spot, looking at the front door. Wouldn't move. And then later in the evening, again, I was in my office, which I've got a clear line of sight to that spot. He was standing in the spot and looking at me from across the house. Ernie just stood in that spot, standing and staring at me from, 20, 30 feet away, whatever it was. That was his day. So I didn't know, do I get rid of, do I move everything back into place like nothing had happened? Do I move the coffee table and pick up the other blankets and pillows and just sort of make it a living room again? Like I didn't know. So it was tough that first night, the first everything, like I said. That night I didn't tell anybody. I texted my brother, I texted my accountant because they knew that there was an issue. They didn't know what was playing out all day. And they were the only ones I told. And I thought because nobody really knew that, nobody had any clue that he was sick. And, just sending a text, and I don't send a Facebook message to, I'm one of those people who it's like, if you're going to have a birthday or if you're going to invite me to an event, you're going to call me and it's going to be personal. I'm not just accepting a blanket invite through a Facebook group message. No. I need it to be personal. And so I kind of thought, okay, well, the next day, Thursday, is going to be very hard because I'm going to start calling people in my life. Some of them, generally I maybe just have a text relationship as of late, right? With the year of Corona. And people who I wouldn't normally call, and it's going to catch them off guard because they're going to be like, Jeremy's calling me. Okay, normally he would just send like a stupid text or something to make me laugh. And I started that. So Thursday morning when the weather was nice, I said, okay, Ernie, we're going to go for a walk. And I started making calls. And it actually became easier as the calls went on. The first two that I made, I was a bumbling mess through every part of the story. And then by the afternoon, seriously, I probably did about a good 8 hours of talking that day. close to the end, then I was able to just sort of keep it together and not be, as emotional. It almost sort of became robotic telling the story. I should have actually maybe just recorded something like this and then just played it for people. Now I could have saved a whole shitload of time. I wouldn't have had to do it. But it did. It got easier as I told people the story. And then I have the debate about how do we send him off now? Because again, this isn't just a simple, me telling people what happened. And again, not that he's a celebrity, not that I'm expecting, R.I.P. Basil to be trending on Twitter, but certainly it's got to be addressed with our audiences too. And that's where I needed some time. I didn't know how. And the good thing about radio is that we have such a weird schedule that segments get bumped all the time or what have you. I don't think that in the 9 years that I had Basil, I think we did 4 birthday shows for him. Birthday shows. They never aired when they were supposed to, because there was either some entertainment story that bumped it, there was another event, we had a celebrity whatever. So I just thought, well, this is fitting because he's going to get bumped a couple times, and there we go. It's what he's used to. So, the dogs have been part of the business. They've got a line of greeting cards. I've licensed their photos to companies. We have we've got endorsement deals, whatever. Like the dogs have made a fortune. Dogs have made a lot of money for dogs anyway. And so I wasn't sure how to do it. And so I thought I had to take some time. And I didn't want anybody's help. I had to do this myself. This for me, this had to come from my heart. I have a lot of creative people around me. I wouldn't accept any help. And then I just kind of stayed tight-lipped about it because I wasn't sure how I wanted this to play out or what. Again, when I had to go and sit down and write a post for my newspaper column site, I had nothing prepared. I went into my office and I sat and I said, type, JB, type. However it comes out is how it comes out. It's how you're feeling, and that's the most genuine reaction, and that's just the most real way to do it. And so same thing for here. I don't have any talking notes. I don't have any again, I've told the story enough that I kind of have it. I haven't tightened it up for time as much as maybe you would all help. But at the same, and this is where maybe it will sound selfish, I'm also sort of doing this more for me than for the listener. I'm doing this so that I can almost sort of get closure. This, in a sense, is Basil's eulogy. This is me talking about, the fun that we've had, the craziness, the stress that he brought to my life at times. This is me sending him off with a tribute. We have so many flowers. I've never had pictures developed for myself of the dogs. I've had, framed pictures, given to my grandma or my mom or whoever. You can go to my house. I have no pictures of my dogs. I've got tons of them on my phone, like a lot of people do. I've never had anything framed. We have just the nicest picture frames of the dogs, of Basil, and some of the cute. And so that's the tribute. We have his urn, Ernie, and then Ernie. Ernie walked with me back to the vet to go and get the urn. He had a moment with it where he kind of licked it and sniffed it. I don't know that he knows what it is, but he kind of had a moment laying with it. And I'm okay now. I'm okay now. Yes, of course I'm going to get choked up. I'm going to have those moments of emotion. But I'm okay. And it's nice to just sort of have the quality time with Ernie now, where we can just kind of be chill and laid back and relaxed. And I mean, I can't talk to him about the memories, obviously. I mean, but we're bonding, we're having a good time, we're walking, a lot, taking new ways. We're going new streets, we're just going all over. We've done some paw paintings in the backyard. That was always something fun the guys like to do. Was I'd get out the finger paints and and I'd have tarp and everything laid out outside. We even do it in the kitchen sometimes, sheets and tarp and towels everywhere, and just put their paws in the paint, and they would walk on the paper or do I'd press it down. I'd write their name with their paws, the background, and then towards the end, we would all be covered in paint. There would be paint literally everywhere. The cleaning lady hated these nights, but it was just kind of fun. I think they actually looked forward to that because I've got the paint on my face and my hair. They've got it on their head and on their ears and everywhere. And so that's what I did with Ernie a couple times. I think that at the beginning of that, he didn't really. I think he was kind of like, where's the other guy? Like, we shouldn't be doing things like this. And since then, Ernie has not gone down to the basement. Not that we do much down there anyway. I have a fairly big house. The basement was kind of just sort of the wrestling room, the wrestling rec room. He hasn't gone down there yet. So it's, it's a little bit different. So yeah, there's moments when you kind of look at a picture and you have a smile, but The weirdest thing was that night, I thought, when I was emotional and I was recording that 52-minute thing, I pulled up my folder on my computer that's called Dogs. I couldn't open the folder. I couldn't look at pictures of Basil. And to me, that was strange, because you'd think that that's where I'm going to have good memories, right? I'm going to look at those and smile. Couldn't. And this might sound morbid, but before I left the room, like the examining room, I guess you'd call it, I took a picture of his paw on my hand. His paw was sticking through the blanket. And then I just kind of thought, I have to see him one more time. And I did. I took a picture of him, laying there. Just his one, his front paws and then his head. That was the only picture that I could look at that night. I don't know why. I'm not sure why. And then that night, after I recorded that 52 minutes, I listened to it 3 times, not critiquing the performance or the delivery, or I should have been more emotional here. I was overly emotional here. There was something, I don't know if the word's cathartic or therapeutic, or there was something that was just so good. Good might be the word. To hear myself expressing emotion, listening to myself pouring it all out. It was hard. I was crying as I was listening to it, but it made me feel okay. And so that's sort of the message right now. I know we've got to go to Dr. Phil. I know we've got 3 guests and we're an hour into the show already. I'm okay with it, and that's why I feel right now I'm in an okay place to share the story with you. And we're live, and this was our deadline. We had a date scheduled that we were going to do this, and it just didn't work, and it didn't feel right. I didn't like those previously recorded segments. So now this is where an established broadcaster, somebody who's been in the business for a long time, when you know that you're live and there's no takebacks, and there's no do-overs, and there's no whatever, that's when you bring your game. And so maybe that's what I needed to do. We'll be right back. Dr. Phil talking about families mourning the loss of pets on the Scribble. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Well, let's talk about rescuing animals. I mentioned how Basil was a rescue from the City Pound, and there's something so gratifying when you go to a shelter and adopt an animal. But then when you get the animal home, that's when the entire dynamic of your family can change. So to talk about that, to get us through it, I figure there's only one person that we can have. It's Dr. Phil, and he's producing also a show called That Animal Rescue Show on CBS All Access, and Dr. Phil is joining us on the line right now. Hi, Dr. Phil.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your pet. I've been through that myself in the last few years after having a rescue for 13 years, and I know that's a terrible thing to go through. So you have my condolences.
Thank you very much. And that's the thing, though, is that when it's a human, we can communicate with each other, right? We can talk. We can talk it through. But that was the crazy thing. He was diagnosed with a blood disease, and then less than 2 weeks later, gone. And that's where, as a human, you feel so helpless, right? Because I've been there with you from everything, but yet you can't tell me what's wrong. You can't tell me what's hurting. And just like I want to tell you that it's okay, I don't know that you understand me, right? It's really tough with a pet.
Well, it is, and I think that's why they're so vulnerable, and they don't understand, and I think that's why we are impacted by it so much. You said it very well. We can discuss it. We can have this communication with a human that we can't with an animal, and so we feel like they're lost, they're scared. And it's hard to know what their experience is, so you try to comfort them, but still you have to do what you have to do, and it's difficult.
Now, is there, I mean, everybody grieves differently, so I know that there's not one set answer for this, but for me, I almost felt like it would have been easier if this was a long and drawn-out death. Now, I'm not saying that I wanted to see him suffer. That's not what I mean at all. But that at least I could prepare for it. You know how, like, if you have a family member in the hospital and they've got cancer and it's dragging out for weeks and months, like, you almost emotionally have time to prepare. But in something like this, I mean, we didn't see it coming. And so I think that's maybe what hurt me most, was that I didn't have time to prepare for it. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, because often we actually begin grieving with the diagnosis, not the death. So if someone comes and says, you have a family member and they have a terminal disease, that actually triggers the grief process, and so you have an opportunity to begin that experience, and it might spread over maybe 6 months or 3 months or a year, where you prepare for it. Nothing prepares you for that final moment, the finality, the gravity of the death, but you do have the opportunity to prepare yourself for it, to ease into it some. And when you look at it psychologically, the number one stressor in life is to lose someone to a violent death. It's instantaneous and they are violated. And then second is a sudden death of a loved one. So a violent death of a loved one is number one. A sudden death of a loved one is number two. So that's when you just don't have time to prepare, and so the shock factor is really big.
And it's interesting, too, how we sort of rack our brains, like, and again, as a pet owner, you realize that at some point you're either going to have your animal put down or they will die. And so I always envisioned it to be, we'll go to the vet office, it'll be very clinical on that cold steel table and very impersonal. And now I hear that vets will, they can come to your house where it's more comfortable. For me, I mean, the situation played out basically right on my living room floor. And for the first few days after that, it was very difficult. I didn't even want to walk on that spot. Like, it almost kind of felt like that was his grave. Obviously, he's not buried there, but I was walking around it, and then I couldn't move the coffee table into the right spot. Like, it took a couple of days for me to kind of put the living room back in order. Is that, I hate using the word normal, but is that kind of a normal way to feel?
Well, it is. Animals, pets, certainly are not commodities. I know sometimes I've seen parents where a child will lose a pet and they'll race out and get a replacement pet to put there. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. We need to give an opportunity to grieve this pet, memorialize the pet with some ritual of passing, and also you can properly observe the passing. And you do have those experiences where it's like it's hard to look at this place. It's hard to you feel like you're kind of defiling the location if you just kind of go back to normal. You feel like you're kind of betraying the memory. That's quite typical. Everybody does grieve differently, but it's like I don't want to just walk where the dog was last laying. That it's kind of like I'm stepping on the dog, and I don't want to do that. So. That's not atypical at all. It's just a matter of, the emotions that you have during the time.
Is there, I think maybe a better word rather than normal would be healthy. Is there a healthy time period that people grieve, or it just takes as long as it takes?
It takes as long as it takes. And the length and breadth of your grief for a person or an animal is in no way reflective of the depth or breadth of your love and caring for the object of your love and affection. If you lose a parent, people will remarry in 6 months, and others aren't ready in 2 years. That doesn't mean the one that remarries in 6 months loved their lost spouse any less than the person that remarries in 2 years or never. It's just that they process differently. Some people focus on the event of the death, and some people focus more on the process of their life and celebrate the time they spent together. So it's just a matter of point of view and how you process your emotions. And some do it very intensely in a short period of time, and others have to ease into it. And it just doesn't, how fast you do it doesn't reflect how much you cared.
Let's talk about kids for a second. There's no kids in my household, but I know a lot of our listeners have kids. We often hear that, you say that the dog ran away or he's gone to a farm. How do you know when the right time is to tell your kids about death? Is it an age? Is it a sign of their maturity? How do you determine?
Well, we always say you discuss these things in age-appropriate terms, but we never define what age-appropriate terms are. And the way to determine that is to ask questions and listen to the symbol system they use, the depth of their concept and perception. So it's like if you're talking to your child about the animal, you have to listen to what they say and what their concept of death is. At 4 or 5 years old, they may have no concept of death whatsoever. They don't understand the finality of death, and so you're going to be less concrete in your explanation of it. And it depends on whether you've raised your child with a spiritual value system or not. For example, if you have, and they've had a religious upbringing and a spiritual value system, then you can talk about, grandma has gone to be with the Lord.
Right.
Which is different than saying we're taking her out to the cemetery and burying her in the ground, which is a pretty cold, concrete, but accurate description of what's happening. You can describe it more in spiritual terms. If that's not part of your value system in your family, then you have to talk about it in terms of, she's sick and she didn't get better, so she's not going to be with us anymore, but she's still in your mind and your heart and your memory. And so you talk about it in ways that they understand. Do they understand memory? Do they understand emotions and feelings? Hear what words they use back to you and describe that to them. And I will say, I believe that being real with children, certainly 7, 8 years old, about a goldfish or a hamster or a pet is preparation for when they do deal with the loss of a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt. They kind of learn their way through the maze of emotions with a pet, so they're at least introduced to the concept before they have to deal with it on something that is of much greater concern and gravity.
Right. One more question about relationships, then we'll talk about the new CBS All Access show. Now, in relationships, it almost becomes a custody battle, right? Sometimes there's a breakup, things don't work out, but you have a pet together. I mean, how is it like custody where you get, like a kid where you get one day and then the next day or a weekend? How do you work that out?
Well, that's a really tough one, right? Because if you have a pet that both of you are bonded with, it is exactly that. It's the same emotional bond that husband and wife can have with a pet that they've shared, and have to work out some kind of sharing arrangement, because there's no reason, because the two of you can't get along, that all of a sudden you've severed your relationship with the pet.
Right.
I do think that's something where you have to work it out, where both of you continue to have access to the animal. There's no reason not to, right? I mean, both of you have the relationship, and both of you should continue to have access.
So the new show I mentioned, it's called That Animal Rescue Show. You're executive producing it, and it takes people inside, I guess as the name implies, right? Animal rescue. So how did you get involved with the project?
Well, I'm a great animal lover, and I have been since I was a child, and I've become a huge animal advocate in working with rescue organizations, and so I got into this just because in working with these different animal rescue organizations around the country, I just came to observe that those that really are activists in this, to me, are just, some of them are just real characters. They're very passionate about this, and there are great stories there about who these people are, why they do what they do. And then our focus is the relationship between the people that work with these animals and the animals themselves, the relationships that are formed. Because what you see, Jeremy, is you see people rescuing these animals, and then the animals rescuing them right back. This is not a one-way street. This is a two-way street where the advocate, the volunteer, the rescuer truly gets as much out of it as the animal does, because there's a need in them, there's a drive in them that's filled by this animal. And whenever you see how this unfolds, it's absolutely inspirational. And in a lot of the sanctuaries where the volunteers work, and they have open houses where children and adults alike come out and interact with the animals, it's kind of like equine therapy in a less structured fashion. But the curative aspect of that connection between people that are hurting and these animals that have been hurting is just phenomenal. It's something you just have to see and experience, and I think it's going to really open up people's point of view to volunteering and getting involved in this world. So I think it's a very inspirational docuseries, and if people haven't watched it yet, I hope they really do.
That's the thing. Animals, it seems, are great for our mental health. Again, going back to the day when I adopted my dog, you just get this gratifying feeling. Like I was almost like on a high. On the way home, I was just so excited. It was such a great feeling.
Well, I have to confess, as I told you, we lost Maggie 2 years ago, and she was on dialysis the last year of her life, and had a very good quality of life. She didn't even know it. She just jump up, run around, play, and have a great time. And then we mourned her for 2 years when we lost her. But I came home from one of these sanctuaries with 2 new puppies. So we now have Blue and Einstein. And I could hold one in each hand when I brought them home. They're now 4 months old. And Jeremy, these dogs are already 45 pounds apiece. So Robin says she's going to have them fitted for saddles so the grandkids can ride them. They're going to be huge. So I don't know. There were feral puppies from some dogs that lived on some ranches down in Austin, and so I'm back in the game. So I've got 2 new rescue pups.
Well, I was going to say, so now you literally have your hands full when they're that big.
Yes, we do. And I mean, their paws are like 12 double E. I have no idea how big these dogs are going to be.
But again, it goes back to that whole thing that it really does make the house, right? I mean, it was totally different when I came home and, we're one dog short. We still have a golden retriever, so that's great, but it's not the same, right? There's just a change in dynamic, whether it's good or bad, when you bring the dog home or you take the dog out for that last time.
Yeah, it really does change the whole thing, and I was worried when these dogs started growing. You could hear them growing in the other room, I swear. I thought, Robin's going to kill me, and then I walked in the other room, and she was in the floor with him, and they were just all crawling all over, and I thought, okay, no problem. She's a smitten kitten, so we're in good shape. She is so in love with these puppies now, so I don't think it matters if they turn into be Shetland ponies.
Well, that's great. So and again, back to your show. I mean, we need this, this uplifting content nowadays because, the last time you were on with us, that whole coronavirus thing was just starting, and now that's all behind us, right?
Yeah, right. We're right in the middle of that, and I think this show's a great reminder of human nature and focusing on what we really need to be focusing on right now instead of all the divisiveness and discord. It's a great break to focus on something that's healthy and strong and feels good, and I really hope this is a great break for people and recharges their batteries a little bit. So that's the goal. That's why we're releasing it when we did, and it's all 10 episodes are out there, so I hope people take a look at it. And I sure appreciate you having me on today and talking about it.
Well, I thank you, Doc. Thank you for giving me the counseling session that maybe I needed as well, too, right?
You bet.
So the show is called...
I look forward to talking to you again soon, Jeremy.
Thank you. The show is called That Animal Rescue Show. The 10 episodes, as Dr. Phil says, are on CBS All Access. Great chatting with you, Dr. Phil. Thanks so much for making the time.
You bet. Talk soon.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Earlier, we talked with Dr. Phil about how families cope with the loss of a pet, and by families, I mean the people who can talk and tell us how they feel, but we can't forget about the pets that are left behind, right? I mean, my golden retriever lost his best friend, the four-legged sidekick who was around him every minute of the day for 9 years. So to talk about how our dogs grieve, I thought of one person, right? We've got Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, joining us on the line. Hello again, my friend.
How are you? Sorry for your loss.
Well, thank you, Cesar, and, thanks for making the time, and I thought of you for this segment because, the first time that you were on the radio with me many years ago, we talked about your documentary on Nat Geo Wild, and you really opened up about the rough patch that your life hit, and you overcame it, and you were strong, and you learned so much about yourself. So I'm really grateful that you have the time to talk with us today.
It's always a pleasure to help, man. The older I get, the more I understand to help people.
So let's talk about the death of a pet. I had gone through it before with our family dog years ago. We didn't have another pet at that time. Now I'm on my own. There's another dog at home. So I guess my first question is, does my dog understand death? I mean, could he tell that his brother had a blood disease and was in pain? Do they communicate that with each other?
Absolutely. I think, happiness, pain, love, sadness, all of that communication. They also smell illnesses, sickness. So that animals are always very connected of health. And do they understand birth, life, and death? Absolutely. That's the cycle of life. And that's why they're here to teach us a lesson how to live on this planet. Most of my clients, they get a little sidetracked and they focus on money, fame, and power. And they don't focus on natural, simple, profound. So once death come into the picture or birth come into the picture, most people, they put a lot of emphasis on the birth and on the death, except on the living, and that's where actually we have to really enjoy that moment, because it gets to a point that the cycle of that particular member of the family ends for some reason, and sometimes in situations of ways where it's like sad to hear, cancer, blood things, or so many different ways. But do animals know? Absolutely. Like I said, just like they know happiness, they know sadness, and like they know health, they know sickness. So that's why we bring dogs to hospitals, because they can change other people's frame of mind that humans can't. That's why we train dogs to detect cancer, and people, so we catch them at stage 1. So do animals know, especially dogs? Yeah, they have a great sense of smell. So if a dog is going through some illnesses and sickness, it happens. Do the dogs mourn? Do dogs understand death? Absolutely. And that's what they enjoy life every single second. So for that moment, when it comes down, that you have the departure, and then your cycle and this earth is finished, and then they know how to honor it.
Would we have recognized any visual cues that they were sharing with each other?
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. I don't just have dogs. I have donkeys. I have a horse, llamas, alpacas, dogs. Even you can see when the dogs go see, they detect when one of the dogs doesn't feel well, in case that we miss that part. Like, they never miss the little details, and this is why it's important to observe nature. When you heard bird watching, it's pretty much it. We're watching the behavior, the communication, the relationship that they have, and then when they're happy, they're happy. When they're sad, they're sad. It's very obvious. They don't know how to hide. They don't know how to suppress. We just have to be attentive and just being pretty much relaxed. Honestly, what misses a lot of times, people not read this, is they're not in a calm state, so you don't get to see the little details. A lot of times people ask me, so what did you see? The reason what I see is not what what do I see. Is the reason what I can't see is because when I am with animals, I'm always in a calm state. So I get to see the little shifts, the little moments, the little conversations. They're very hard to see if you're too excited or distracted. But if you're calm, you get to see all of it. That's the whole point of being in a calm state and enjoying nature.
When I'm going to have a dog put to sleep, you go to the vet's office, or I guess now sometimes veterinarians come to the house where it's a little bit more comfortable. This unfortunately was in our living room, totally unexpected, and the dogs were just around each other, so there was really, nothing we could sort of do in that moment. Is it harder to just remove one dog from the house and have him put down in the vet and then come home without him, and the other dog is kind of like, where's my friend? I mean, what do you recommend for something like that?
The natural, simple, profound. Natural is for them to see bird life and death. With the dog living in a calm life, so they can't get the closure. But if a dog, you mentioned, vet come to the house. That's by far the most honorable, loving, profound way of helping somebody not be in pain. Because the only reason we will do something like that is because they're in pain. It's best if they witness in the state, because it gives them closure.
And then, I mean, when we come home from the vet, obviously, so we put the one dog in the kitchen, we have to leave the house with the other. And when we open the door and he's running around the house sniffing, and his nose took him right to the front door, which is where the dog exited. For the rest of the day, he laid on the floor where this all played out in the afternoon and stared at the front door. So what is our dog needing from us then? Do we just leave him alone and let him do that? What do we do?
I seen when humans, when the humans passed away, and the dog get to see that the human went inside this hole, and so the dog ended up on top of the tomb. It's pretty much how you're describing, your dog waiting at the door. Mm-hmm. is waiting at the door, is it okay? Yeah, not too bad, because the dog is actually going through something, an adjustment. But at the same time, I think what I do when a dog gets too much like lost in the moment, I take him to the beach. I change the environment immediately. So the nose, the eyes, and the ears focus on something else. So I give the dog like a pause, like a break from being so focused on me not being able to accomplish the closure, you know. And so if he's a little confused because of the other dog not coming back, I just immediately, you know, I let him go through what he's experiencing, but I don't let him stay there too long, because then the depression can come in, or the completely confusion, and they can go into hiding.
But then, you know, night falls and the house gets back to normal the next day. My concern was that the smells all over the house will be reminders. I know you always talk about how dogs lead with their nose. What's your, like, I thought, do I get rid of the toys, hide them? Is it going to be too painful of a reminder? What are the triggers in my dog's memory then for the next couple of days or weeks after?
Don't do it. I mean, that's actually like a cleaning the new cleaning environment of the old toys, where it reminds that part. So I would never remove things if the dog is watching. I would take the dog away. Somebody else is in charge of removing blankets or toys, anything. So just when the dog comes back, the scent is not as strong, you know. And so it's easier for the dog to move on and just create a new scent.
Now, of course, when we share the news of a pet passing away, people are very quick to tell us, get another dog, right? It's just not that easy, as I'm sort of experiencing now. Tell me about a dog, though. Does he need a new friend right away? Does he need maybe just interactions with other dogs? What's your suggestion?
Well, you know, if you are in pain, if you're sorry, if you're trying to fulfill a void, my suggestion is never to get a dog. A lot of people have breakups with their boyfriends or girlfriends, and they want to get a dog to fulfill an empty space. My suggestion is not, because the dog is going to sense your pain or your weakness at that moment, and then they're going to end up controlling the relationship. They don't follow instability. So if you're not feeling stable, and then that's not the right time to get a dog. And if you get a dog, it's for selfish reasons. It's not for family reasons. So, you know, a lot of my clients get dogs when they are in pain, when they're feeling lonely, or when they're feeling, you know, really sorry, or when they're feeling guilty, or they just don't want to go through the mourning experience. So, yeah, my suggestion is, you know, go through the pain, just heal yourself, move. You know, hopefully you move on quicker, and you honor, and you know, that was the time that your dog was meant to be on this earth. Obviously, I'm one of those people that I wish the dogs can live forever. Yes. But at the same time, that's not reality. And yes, I mean, get a dog once you are stable, and once your dog is happy. So the new dog doesn't have to come into a place where, why is everybody sad? You know, why nobody's celebrating life? You know, why everybody's so negative, or you know, have this negative energy inside of them. They don't know. They don't know a dog passed away. They have no idea. They just know that he came into a home where people are sad, and a dog is confused.
Right. Okay, so let's shift from sadness to happiness. I know you're always busy and working on some great projects. What do you have on the go right now?
Well, we're shooting our new show. We're doing it here at the ranch, and people are coming with their really, really sad problems, and really strong situations that you're not going to believe. And I'm asking people to share a little bit more than what I did in my other shows, because this is what dogs pick up, you know, the energy that you have, including people that, you know, their dogs passed away and they move on to another one, and they say, well, I don't understand why my dog is not behaving and why my dog is not listening to me. But then we talk about, you know, what happened before you adopted this dog. And then they start realizing, you know, how energy plays a role, and how healthy or negative energy plays a role. And since I have all the animals here at the ranch, it's just the transformation is going to be magical, honestly. This is my third week, and just it's going extremely well. I don't have to go to people's home. People come to my land, to the DPC, and we get to work as soon as they park the car. And sometimes I welcome them with emus, sometimes I welcome them with llamas, and they're not expecting that. Chickens, ducks, we got goats and sheep and turtles, and We have a little bit of everything. We just got a new baby cow, mini cow. So dogs have to come and meet different species, and at the same time, that gives like a beautiful shock value because they're not expecting that smell. And so it gives me access to show people a new beginning, because city dogs, the only thing they know is dogs, cats maybe, and squirrels. So, but when they come to the ranch, everything is like Disneyland for dogs, So people are, automatically, they stop being so nervous, so upset, so tense, and they come and enjoy nature. I have 43 acres, so we go for a beautiful pack walk, and we bring different species, and we go to certain places. I have a temple. We climb the temple. We practice meditation. We practice yoga, just for people to learn how to relax a little bit, And so it's going well. It's called Caesar's Way, and it's going to be in Nat Geo, back in my home, and it's going to be in April. We're coming on the air in April. We're shooting 10 episodes, and we're super excited about it.
Well, I think we'll have to talk again in April then, shall we?
Yes, and I just adopted a puppy too. We just named him Paula, and so I got a new puppy, pocket pit bull, and because Junior is now 15, so I want Junior to teach all what Daddy taught Junior, and so now we are continuing the legacy. This is the first time I rescue a female, so I can continue the legacy of well-behaved pits.
Well, it sounds like, you're always doing such great things for animals, and that's why it was really such a sensitive subject for me, and I really do appreciate you making the time, Cesar. I really, really do.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
All show, we've been talking about the joys of adopting pets, namely dogs. I mentioned that Basil came from, I guess most people call it the City Pound, 9 years ago, and he was actually called Tarzan at the time, but that changed, of course. So joining us to talk about adoption in my hometown of Winnipeg is Mayor Brian Bowman. Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Jeremy. Nice to connect with you.
Well, thanks. I know this is a crazy busy time, so I appreciate you making the time in the year of the Corona.
Yeah, it's a busy time for everybody right now, and appreciate all that you're doing to spread positivity and just help educate people about what they can do, and appreciate listeners' support for following those fundamentals from their local health officials.
So here's the deal. I know you've had some tough interviews lately. I promise you, this ain't one of them, okay? We're going to have some fun today talking, all right?
Good.
I know you need a break. You need to unwind a bit. So we're talking about the joys of animal adoption. I know your family has a dog, so you totally understand what they bring to the household, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, especially during times like this, times of stress for people, Winnipeggers, Canadians, I know folks around the world are spending more time at home, which we're asking them to do right now, and really... quite often, if they have pets at home, it's a great way to relieve stress and just have that companionship with your canine friends. And so we're seeing that happen right now, and we're also seeing adoptions continue so that people can have the benefit of having a furry family member at home.
So tell us about Indiana.
Indiana's our firstborn, so Indiana's a miniature Labradoodle. He's 14 years old and predates the birth of our first son. And so our two children are 12 and 10, and they've always known to have Indiana at home. So he's a little bit stubborn. He's like me. All the good attributes are that of Tracy, my wife, and the bad ones are me. But he's a great dog, and he's starting to show his age recently, and we're giving him lots extra loving these days.
Are there any special tricks or talents that Indiana has that would just wow everybody?
You know what? Probably, I'm sure others have fancier tricks. I mean, one of the things he does is we trained him when he was a puppy to ring a bell when he wants to go outside, so he doesn't bark. So we tied a ribbon with a little tiny bell at the back door, and last night at 1:30 and then again at 5:30 he rang the bell. So it's a little more civilized way for him to let us know that he needs to go out without waking everybody up, and so he does that. He's a good guard dog. And he loves tummy rubs.
I talked about how I got Basil from Animal Services Agency, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. And there's only a few things in people's lives that they remember perfectly, right? Perhaps it's your graduation, your wedding, the birth of a kid. Do you remember the day that you got Indiana?
We do. He could fit in the palm of your hand because he was a puppy. But it just melts your heart, especially with puppies. But dogs of all ages, really, whether they're a puppy or not, they're such social creatures that they really they just want to bond with you. And that for me, coming home from some pretty stressful days at City Hall recently, he's always there. The tail's always wagging, and and he doesn't know or care what my job is, which is really nice.
Sometimes, though, that's also the weird thing, though, right? With Corona and social media and everything, like, they have absolutely no idea what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes that seems to be the better life.
But I suspect right now it's also been difficult for them. I know you've interviewed others that have much more expertise in this, but our daily habits have changed a lot, and I have no doubt that that's been stressful, and we've noticed a little bit of that with our dog. We're home at different times. Just things are different, and they're creatures of habit, and so we're having to try to just be sensitive to that. The fact that our dog may be under a little bit of stress too, even though we're around a little bit more. He doesn't get his daytime naps like he normally does.
Do you want Dr. Phil's phone number or anything? I can hook you up if you need to talk it through. Let's talk about Animal Services Agency, though. I know, when I was a kid, I remember hearing that dogs are there for 7 days, and if nobody gets them, they're put down. Which I'm fairly certain that's not the case in most city-run shelters. How is it set up in Winnipeg?
Well, firstly, the professionals at Animal Services do outstanding work, and I do want to give them a shout-out, and all those in other communities that are doing similar services. Our Animal Services really has been experiencing strong and consistent adoptions during the pandemic. They've relied heavily on social media, like petfinder.com and our 311 service. They've also creatively used social media to help reunite lost pets, and so they're not expanding, or they've not expanded fostering as a result of the strong levels of adoptions and redemptions. Our Animal Services has had approximately 50% less dogs under their care during COVID, and so that's a good thing because people are those pets are at their homes presumably, and more often than not, and that's a good thing. They've worked really hard at making sure that adoptable dogs continue to have positive outcomes, and fewer stray dogs come in during the pandemic, as we're seeing, and as a result, I think it's as a result of more people being at home with their pets.
And how does it work there in terms of intake? Oftentimes there's very little information they have about a dog because it could just, randomly be brought in. I was told Basil was running alongside cars on Kenniston. And I know the other week I was on the city website and I read that one, this is hard. There was one that they said that was tied to a pole and just left there. How... and you know, I just hate those stories because you know it makes you look at people a different way. But that's not what we're talking about today. Dogs at the shelter are brought in from all over, though, I guess, right?
They are, yeah, and each one has their own story. Of course, sometimes we don't have that full story, but you know, the story that begins for them at Animal Services is one of respect and care. And you know, I've been into Animal Services many times, and these are some of our most outstanding public servants that just care deeply for the animals in their care. And you know, their job number one is to make sure the dogs are healthy and safe, and then they find that forever home for those pets to really bring the joy and really bonding that comes with pet ownership.
Over the course of a year, obviously, as you've said, this is a bit of a different year, but on average, do you know, like, how many dogs are adopted through Animal Services Agency?
You know, it's pushing. There have been some years where it's pushing 300. So adoptions in from January to November of 2019, we had 289 adoptions. This year, from January to mid-November, we've had 229 adoptions, and so you know, I'm pleased that they've been able to find creative ways to connect people to their to new families during the pandemic.
And if people wanted to get more information, I know you said social media is a great way to connect with Animal Services Agency, but the city website really has all the information.
Yeah, just winnipeg.ca, and they can and folks can also find you know, just call 311. The social media platforms also, I mean, good luck if you can resist not adopting a dog, taking a look at their social media. Animal Services puts out just some great photos of these dogs, and kind of melts your heart. So, you know, you proceed to the Instagram account with care.
And I know we've got to wrap this up. I know, you know, we've chatted many times. I think one of the most memorable highlights for me is Dreams Take Flight in Orlando. We've done that a couple times. Obviously, we couldn't do that this year. I like to have fun with you. I like to have fun with you. So I've got this last hard-hitting question for you. Stick with me on this one, okay? So say you get a call from Ottawa, maybe it's Trudeau, whoever, and he says, you know, hey, B-Man, the Queen wants to come to Winnipeg and go to the library to read Jeremy's book. They're closed now, right? Who?
Yeah.
Can she get? Would you let her in? Who has the power? Could you let the Queen into the library right now?
You know what? The library services, there are still some library services that are happening, and so she'd have to respect the rules like everybody else.
Okay.
But we would give her. I mean, I think all Winnipeggers should be treated like royalty to the extent we can. And so, you know, when it comes to getting books and using the online services which are available, she doesn't even have to fly overseas. She can do. She can access some of our services online from Buckingham Palace.
Just a bit of a fun question. I thought we'd end on a fun note, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Be safe, Jeremy.
for joining us. I appreciate it. I know you're busy. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet. Take care.
Great.
We'll
Thanks.
talk soon.
All right. Thanks, you too. Bye now.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. Whenever we have the Twitter reminder, that's where I breathe a sigh of relief, because that means that we're in the home stretch and the show is almost over. You know, we're heading out to the 2-hour mark. That's where we're going to call it a wrap here. My thanks to Dr. Phil McGraw, Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, Mayor Brian Bowman from my hometown of Winnipeg. And thank you, by the way, I've got to tell you, the fact that you've listened to this entire time, it tells me either that you are a very compassionate person and you are open to hearing somebody grieve and hear them expressing their feelings and their emotions, or it could also be that you're just an animal lover and you feel touched by it, right? Again, I think we got some really good information from our experts. I think Dr. Phil obviously is very insightful, as is Cesar, and it's it really touches me that you have stuck with me for an hour and 58 minutes listening to this, listening to me sob. Again, that a 50-something minute rant. That's not a conversation. That's a monologue, because you couldn't talk back. I couldn't hear you, right? But I would love to hear from you, though. You can send me an email, live@jbonair.com. live@jbonair.com. Again, you can go to our radio show website. jbonair.com is the radio show website. Click on web extras. You can see all of the photo galleries of Ernie and Basil in their Halloween costumes. They were, for Canada Day, they were dressed for the Super Bowl last year, so they've had some really good, nice NFL photo shoots. So that's jbonair.com, and then click on the link web extras. So look for that. Again, I thank everybody who's taken an interest in my dogs over the years. It's touching. It's great. I've loved seeing the pictures of your dogs and pets when you send them. And again, I'm grateful to the celebrity guests who have made the time to join us today and kind of talk me through it. And again, thank you so much for listening. The email address, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. And we're going to have a more upbeat show, I hope, next week, right? Oh, it's our Black Friday show next week. Yes, we have something fun for you. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on Black Friday, and we're going to be talking about a really cool product that I have. All right. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. Bye-bye, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter @thescribbleshow. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.